was a time I used to look into my father's eyes. In a happy home, I was a king, I had a
Always wanted to walk up to music. Feel a lot cooler now.
Said we felt like pitchers in Dodger Stadium coming out to our music.
That'd be cool too, by the way. Right. Good afternoon, everybody. How you guys doing? Gretchen, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to talk about ArcLight as a publisher ultimately, but I bet a lot of people in the room don't even fully know what ArcLight is. So maybe take a minute and describe the product.
Has anybody been to ArcLight Cinemas in LA? Yes. So ArcLight is, we're a theatrical exhibition company, movie theaters. We are based in Los Angeles and we're privately owned, third generation. We come from a long line. We started with drive-ins 60 years ago and then went to what we then called hardtop theaters and now have evolved to ArcLight Cinemas. We just opened in Washington, D.C. this fall, which was our first venture outside of California. And we have 2 theaters under construction in Chicago that Matt will be visiting. And we're opening in Culver City in Los Angeles next Friday and Santa Monica in the fall. So part of what we're going to talk about today is ArcLight's 13 years old, but we had 1 theater for 7 years. And by the end of this year, we'll be at 10. So it's been kind of a really fast growth for us as being such a small company. ArcLight really came about, Chris Foreman, our CEO, loves movies, loves the art of filmmaking, would go to the movies constantly. We owned Megaplex theaters, we owned Pacific theaters, and he knew it had to be better than that. It had to be better than waiting in line, advertising, neon, Slurpees, and so ArcLight came about, and people thought we were nuts. We were the first all-reserve seating. Even on Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock, it was reserved seating. We have absolutely no advertising on screen, no advertising in the lobby, and we were the first to have a website where you buy your tickets in advance online, so there's no lining up at a box office. You walk in now, mobile, and so it just kind of put the industry, things that are very that are the norm now, were very innovative 13 years ago.
Yeah, quite different than I think most of the big megaplexes, as you say, that we all go to.
Right.
So as we start to talk about you guys as a publisher of content, I'm guessing a lot of what you guys think about comes from the fact that you are a different animal than your competitors. Talk about, as you guys are more experience driven, has that driven you to think about different strategies that you think differently than a lot of your competition?
Yeah, so we're, like I said, people thought we were nuts for what we were doing, and those things have become the norm. So we know that. We know that you can duplicate any of those pieces, and we wanted it to be about the experience. Yeah. We really paid attention to what our guests were looking at, what they wanted. They didn't want lines, they didn't want hassles, the things that kept people home. And now we've evolved to where we know people can take this content anywhere. You can watch it on your tablet, on your phone, at home, all of these places, so it has to be about the experience. And becoming a publisher of content really came from the things that we know were our guests' favorite things. We have Q&As after a lot of screenings with the filmmakers, the directors, huge differentiator. We have exhibits in the lobbies of all of our theaters where there's photos from behind the scenes filming, there's costumes, there's sets, huge differentiator, and those were things. So it was that deeper look into the movies that really got us to thinking about ArcLight Stories.
Yeah. So talk about, so everything you just talked about is under this brand you call ArcLight Stories.
Right.
Tell about even why you've branded it. Why is it something you call separately versus just it's content you produce? Why is it labeled?
Why is it labeled? We came up with, because ArcLight is about storytelling.
Yeah.
And one of the pieces of our brand promise is that we will bring great stories to moviegoers. Yeah. We wanted ArcLight to be a place where movie lovers belong. And from day one, we have had the brand promise that we would show the big blockbuster movies, small indie films, documentaries, retrospective, all of those at the same time, all the time. Yeah. And ArcLight Stories kind of came about that same way. It's how do we bring just another great story to our audience? And it didn't have to be something that someone else made. It was a deeper look into a film. And we saw a gap. We saw a gap that you could see a very similar story on, E! Entertainment or Entertainment Tonight or in People Magazine. There was a lot of that type of content, and there was less about just more of a specific look into a movie. If it's a movie that has great special effects, we want to talk to the special effects director because everybody's talking to the star. And so it was that kind of getting that story in there that we found very interesting.
Yeah. So talk about how when you first decided to produce stories, or as you've become successful at producing this content, what's been the key to making you guys good at that? How has that worked so well for you?
Well, two things. You have to always hire someone smarter than you and better than you. And so when we were looking at this content and I had this idea, I'm not a content creator. I've never been a filmmaker. And so we went out and hired someone who could do that well for us. And we went to CNN and entertainment editor there, J.D. Cargill, who had worked for CNN for years. We had worked with him on certain things, and he was interested in coming to work with us and kind of spearheading this project. And so having his eye and that quality was really the first step. And then secondly, the studios. And where we've been doing this now for a little over a year, and really we're at this point where I hope to be in 3 years. It has just gone that fast because the studios are so hungry for new content and a way to bring a different story about their films out, because they've got a very structured marketing budget, but how do they have other pieces of their movies, coming out? And so they've been a fantastic partner.
Yeah, I think that's one of the particularly interesting things that I've learned about as we've been kind of prepping for this conversation, is just how much the studios are coming to you saying, please produce something for us, take some behind the scenes footage, be real, whatever it is, figure out how to tell a story about that. So when you have these studios coming to you, you clearly want to be good partners to them. How are you choosing, and how much content are you guys able to produce? Is it one a week? Is it one a month? Is it multiple? How does that process happen?
We produce about 3 a month, is what we average. What we're discerning about is if we have month after month where it's 2 or 3 films that are coming to us and they start to look the same, that's where it kind of gives us pause. And as I was telling Matt, this weekend there's a huge LA book fair that the Los Angeles Times hosts on USC's campus for the entire city, and we went there and we did an ArcLight story on novels to screen. So it wasn't about a specific film or specific filmmakers, but it was talking to authors and talking to publishing houses about novels that become movies, and finding that to be an interest. So we mix that in. So where we really start being discerning is if it feels the same. If it feels like we've had a lot in a row that are just movies with filmmakers. Oh, we've had the director, that we want to really mix things up.
So there's obviously a big investment you guys have made to create this content, right? This isn't cheap to produce, I'm guessing. I mean, maybe various scales of depending on what you're producing. But at the end of the day, you've got to get people to come in, buy tickets, and see movies. Are you correlating the investment you're making into all this content into ticket sales, directly, indirectly? Is that important to you? Talk about how you justify and validate this investment.
When we first put the project together, the 2 measurements or 2 goals that I set were, I wanted after 3 years for it to pay for itself. We weren't looking for it to be a line of business that was creating profit, but just to pay for itself, because again, it really spoke to a component of our brand promise and giving that to our guests. And then secondly will we see an increase in ticket sales? We know that if Furious 7 was a huge movie, you're in Los Angeles, you've got 20 options to go see it. What we're hoping is content like this, as you're looking at those showtimes and looking at those theaters, to say, no, I'm going to go to ArcLight because I bet they have something special associated with that film, and just shift that behavior where it's not driven by title and showtime, it's driven by the experience you're going to have as well.
And we were talking earlier, a bunch of us in a town hall discussion about the importance of measurement and metrics and kind of broad recognition of there's no one answer yet, that everyone's still struggling with exactly how to create the direct line of sight. Is it something, as you think about this and you have the belief that it's driving that experience, you have a belief that it's driving preference, are you able to measure it directly yet? And if not, is that okay for right now?
We aren't, and it is okay. It's like marketing and any marketing and advertising that you have a belief. We do surveys.
Yeah.
We ask questions each week of our membership and people who've bought tickets to all the different theaters. So we do include that question.
Yeah.
And did they watch the ArcLight story? Did they enjoy it? And as far as self-funding, our next step is it desirable to outside companies?
Yeah.
And when you're speaking about the studios, I think I fell out of my chair when I got my first call asking if they could include our ArcLight story on their home video extra content. And to kind of have that come full circle in such a short time was fantastic. And then we're also looking. One of our next steps is small market media. These small markets just don't have entertainment reporters. They're not getting to LA and New York for things. And a lot of the companies like CNN, their entertainment departments are shrinking. And so, is there a world where ArcLight becomes a provider of entertainment content? So you're seeing the entertainment reporter and something branded ArcLight from the red carpet or from an interview of a movie that's opening that week.
This is truly the brand becoming the publisher, right?
Exactly.
And as you do that, then, I mean, if as you think about those opportunities, more resources, more dollars invested, so it does come to that monetization question. So as you think about sharing and distributing this content, letting studios maybe partner with you, do you think about actually monetizing the assets too? I mean, would you bring in advertising or partnerships in that way?
We have started talking about it.
Yeah.
We haven't even monetized YouTube with it yet, and and that's the first step. And it feels we're really thinking through, because we're a non-advertising venue. Our website's non-advertising. What's the right way for us to enter into an advertised YouTube situation, for example? What's the right way for us? We've had requests from some mall developers. You guys have all been to malls where they have the running digital boards with trailers and things. So we've had some requests there to have our content where we have theaters to have it playing there. And again, we just have to figure out what the right thing for the brand. I know how privileged and lucky I am to be able to work with this project without the financial restraints being the leader. They're there and they're definitely in the plan, but they weren't leading us. We had a little bit of leeway for these first 2 years.
Yeah. So where's the content live right now, right? So it is clearly in your theaters, which is a very unique opportunity. The fact that what you produce can be part of the experience, and that's something certainly most brands don't get to take advantage of. But I know you're not just leaving your content in theater. You talk about studios wanting to maybe partner with you and becoming more a publisher, but separate from that, more from that marketing angle. Where are you distributing this content? Can I find it on YouTube? Can I find it on other social channels? And what does that do for the brand? Yeah.
So right now, each piece is produced to play three ways: on screen, which we know is such a great advantage that we have. So we create this content and we get to put it in movie theaters immediately. It lives on our website, on our YouTube channel through arclightcinemas.com, and then we also have it in lobbies. So you can access archival pieces in lobby and watch them as you're hanging out, having a drink, waiting for your movie, and then the next steps will be and they're on Twitter and they're on Instagram as far as from a marketing piece to announce that they're coming. And then our next step will be how do they live in other centers that we're in? How do they live, on other YouTube channels? And then where do we go from there?
Are you finding certain type of content is more popular in social channels than others? And how are you measuring that? Is it view-based, number of views, and what's resonating with your audience? Yeah,
it's definitely view-based, and the biggest factor you can see right there in real time is how many people stay in their seats. Yeah. And watch it after they've watched a movie. At ArcLight, we have a person who greets each show and tells a little bit about the movie, and so they announce to the audience that there's a unique piece after the film to stay and see, and so that's a great measure to see. But it's what you'd expect. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy was huge. Anything that we're seeing with directors, anything that is special effects driven, when you're seeing behind the scenes in an action movie of how it's done, that just anything that gives that really unique view. And really having a big star is not necessarily the driver of a film. We had Maleficent, the film last year with Angelina Jolie. We had the makeup artist and the costumer And that was extremely popular just to see how they did everything that they did to her. So it's anything that's that deeper look. But the big movies, definitely.
Yeah, cool. Well, let's open up the questions as we get some hands. I think you should tell everyone how many movies you get to watch a week.
Well, I was telling Matt, when I go to a festival, I'll see 30 movies in a week. But on an average week, between me and a couple people in our office, we probably see 10.
It's a lot of movies.
Yeah, I've seen 4 this week. What is today, Tuesday? I've seen 4 this week.
I think we're all somewhat. I think we're all interested in the entertainment business, and the fact that you're both marketer, and what we were talking about earlier, she also chooses what's going to be shown in theaters. By the way, I wasn't thinking about this earlier, but that's actually a pretty interesting connection point too, which is that's part of the brand experience. You get to choose what's going to be shown.
Right. So I place, and it's a privilege. I mean, we have such a unique programming, but I choose all the films that we play at ArcLight and how we program and schedule everything, and then any kind of marketing, advertising, PR, and content.
It's pretty cool. Questions in the audience? There we go. Mike is coming for you.
Do you have ArcLight stories in mind when you choose what pieces are going to be in cinema, or do you base the pieces off what's already there?
We usually look 6 to 9 months in advance, and we make our wish list for ArcLight stories and see who's available, what's in, and what kind of unique angle we're going to do for each film.
Other questions? As the next brave soul gets ready to ask something. So you hired someone great to, is that a question? You ready for a question up there? Yep, please go. I've asked enough.
You've mentioned that you've entered new markets. How has your go-to market strategy changed from your LA base to something like a DC market or Chicago market?
It is it's tough hill to climb to introduce a brand into a market, especially something with ArcLight Hollywood being our first theater and it being just so LA-centric, so Hollywood-centric. We really had to step back to say, what are these differentiators that any moviegoer anywhere would want to see, and kind of focus on those versus the things that are very LA-centric. So we do have LA stories, or ArcLight stories in Bethesda. It's not as popular and not as interested yet. It's starting to grow, but they were much more interested in what's different from the basics.
There we go, we got one back there.
When you produce the content, do you think in advance about film versus digital distribution, all the different formats that it might, do you have to do certain things during production in order to account for the distribution platforms?
All of our theaters are digital now. We do keep 35 millimeter and 70 millimeter in our theaters. That's something that most circuits don't do anymore, and that's more for a retrospective. So everything with ArcLight content right now is playing digitally, and so that's the only way we produce right now.
Yeah, right next to you there.
Were you hesitant to put those features up on YouTube and making them so publicly accessible, since, as I understand, it was originally planned to really lure in an audience into your cinemas?
We made everything exclusive to in the cinemas first, and that's now adjusted a little bit. But when we first started, the content was in the theater exclusively for 10 days to 2 weeks before we put it online. And now what we're looking at, and exactly to Matt's last question, is the different genres and where they've played well. We'll have certain content that we don't create an in-theater piece. We only create online, and vice versa, that because that's playing to different audiences.
Mike's coming for you.
Yeah, hi. It seems like your company is really nicely, technologically enabled, future oriented, and so forth. Like, are there things, out in the distance, a couple of years out, in terms of trends that you're seeing, you're thinking about? Like, I don't know where you are. I don't know if you guys have a mobile app that, I don't know, you can change your seats and all that type of stuff. But like, what do you see 3 years out that is just something you're starting to think about in terms of trends?
Right now, the trends really, I think we're kind of at a tipping point on technology, with digital, with HDR and high frame rate and all of these different things that have happened and sort of settled down. Where the big changes are coming now is experiential. It's dine in, it's the big reclining seats, it's reasons why people are coming out of their houses. The big change, Regal, AMC, Cinemark have announced that by the end of 2017, they want to have 30 to 40% of their theaters to be reclining. They call them fat seats. It's not a very, I don't know why,
Right, you guys should know it
but they want them to, excuse me, to have the fat seats and the reclining seats. So, and California, it's interesting. California was one of the last states to pass the law. It just passed this year, where you can take now a drink into any auditorium. But that's been going on in other parts of the country. So I heard a clap. So the selling of alcohol and being able to take that into any auditorium. So I feel like right now the momentum is really in that experience versus technology.
Cool. So we're out of time, but before we get off stage, what should we go see this summer?
You should go see Avengers.
Nice.
Yeah, I saw that last week, and it lives up to everything. And you should go see Mad Max.
Okay.
So there's some
two.
great, and you should see Pitch Perfect too. If you love the first one, you'll love the
There you
second
go.
one.
There you go.
Very
Awesome.
fun.
Well, Gretchen, thank you very much.
Thank you.